I'm going to talk about Kingdom Key. The Keyblade. Every time it appears as a usable weapon, it's the key source starts with, and it falls off in power as you progress through the game, like most starter weapons in RPGs. KH1 is a good example of this. You get Kingdom Key at the end of the Destiny Islands prologue, and while you're getting used to combat, it feels nice and chunky. You could end up with this as your only option for 4 worlds if you follow the battle levels, but after you beat Deep Jungle, you finally get your first new Keyblade, Jungle King. And just like that, most people never use Kingdom Key again. As far as visible stats go, Jungle King has a higher strength and the same MP. You can gather from the description that it's longer too, at the cost of dealing fewer critical hits. But that downside doesn't really matter to most people. Critical hit rate is a hidden stat that you can't see the values for. Reading the description is likely the first time a new player would even notice that critical hits exist in this game. The only other stat Kingdom Key has over Jungle King is another hidden one called Recoil. Basically your recovery time after clinking with an enemy. Jungle King is tied for the lowest value in that stat though, so even though Kingdom Keys is better, it's not great overall. But if you really want the extra 10% crit rate and the slightly better recoil, you can play one more world and get 3 wishes, which is better or even than Kingdom Key in every single stat. There's absolutely no reason to use Kingdom Key after this point in the game. And just like that, it's forever banished to our inventory. But that's largely a product of that game's Keyblade system. Weapons have the stats assigned to them and no other properties to take advantage of. If we were to look at Birth by Sleep and Dream Drop Distance, we see a similar trend since it uses almost the same weapon system. There's a visible strength and magic stat, with a hidden length, critical hit rate, and reality shift rate in Dream Drop. With these flat stats, that means that in Birth by Sleep, by the time you finish the first loop of worlds, you already have Keyblades that outclass the starters. Treasure Trove is the Strength Keyblade. Fairy Stars comes in as the early Magic Keyblade. And while Stroke of Midnight seems underwhelming, it has the highest critical hit stats of these early choices, giving it a niche some people might want. Each character in BBS has unique lengths for their versions of Keyblades, but for all of them, the starting option is tied with or shorter than the rest. Similar to KH1, within the first 2 new options, your starter is totally outclassed. Dream Drop isn't as close though. Whether you're Sora or Riku, as soon as you leave Traverse Town, the very first world, and switch to Skull Noise, you're never going back. It's got better visible stats, then its hidden stats match or improve Kingdom Key and Weighted On, completely overshadowing them. I get that these are RPGs, and introducing new weapons with improved stats is important for progression, but I think there was a way Square could have made the early game weapons usable later. One possibility that came to mind was making an event trigger an equipment upgrade. Imagine you're playing through Kingdom Hearts 1. After landing in Hollow Bastion, Riku steals the Kingdom Key that we've had since the start of our journey. After we catch up to him with a wooden sword, and hold our ground, Sora drops the iconic,
"I don't need a weapon. My friends are my power,"
and the Keyblade returns to him. The scene fades out, then a pop-up appears. The Keyblade has powered up. All of the Keyblades that could be attained up to that point get their stats adjusted to be more competitive, similar to how the battle levels of worlds increase after you steal the keyhole in Hollow Bastion. You can finally use any Keyblade without feeling like you're missing out on damage. Birth by Sleep actually does something similar to this. Once each character gets to the Keyblade graveyard and gives a quote about friends, they get a Keyblade that looks like a powered-up version of their starter. Except for Ventus, but I'm counting it for the other 2. The game doesn't do anything for the other Keyblade stats, but I like that they tried to give you an option matching the starting vibe. Dream Drop doesn't really do this, and I'm struggling to find a good spot in the story to make it happen. Maybe for Riku it would be after he finds out he's Sora's Dream Eater, and for Sora it could be after his visions in the world that never was. But that seems pretty close to the ending, so who knows. Let me know what you think would be a good spot for it to happen. But there's actually a game in the series that's sort of done this already. Kingdom Hearts 179 Days on the Nintendo DS. Using the panel system, you can equip gears that determine what Keyblade Roxas wields. If no gears are used, Roxas has the classic Kingdom Key, and it's not good per usual. Giving no bonus stats, it's objectively worse than anything else. But after beating the main story, you can buy the Zero Gear for 30,000 heart points. Equipping that gives Roxas Kingdom Key Plus, one of the strongest Keyblades in the postgame, with 4 weapon slots to power it up even more. And this is what I'm talking about, the classic Kingdom Key look, with stronger stats and abilities to contend with the other options. This is basically what I mentioned earlier, just a stronger version of the starting weapon, except you buy an item in the postgame instead of it being linked to a story event. So that already answers the question in the title. Yes, Kingdom Key has been good. It's easily a top tier in Days. But I can tell what you're thinking. That's Kingdom Key Plus, totally different than Kingdom Key, so it doesn't count. Just for that person, let's check the rest of the series to see how it stacks up. There's really only 2 more games we're interested in. Recoded, and KH3, which explore new ideas for Keyblades. But before that, have you ever wanted something you don't have, but aren't sure how to make it? This video's sponsor, Pom Pom Incorporated, can help. PP Inc.'s professionally trained Moogle assistants can interpret recipes and assemble your materials to synthesize anything you may need. You can visit any of their virtual kiosks across the world, or their in-person location in Traverse Town's 1st District. Let's say, for instance, I wanted a subscribe button. I would bring them the recipe, which calls for a subscribe button, a mouse cursor, and a left click, or a finger and finger tap for mobile versions. Synthesizing those together gets the perfect result every time. A fresh subscribed button. Try out this recipe next time you get the chance. Thank you to Pom Pom Inc. for sponsoring this video. And let's get back into KH3 and Recoded's iterations of Kingdom Key. In these games, rather than the weapon system as a whole progressing by obtaining new, more powerful options, each Keyblade itself can be powered up, so they all have their own progression. Keyblades in Recoded gain experience by defeating enemies to level them up. As they level up, they unlock more abilities in their ability tree. They also don't give any stats here. That helps to retain their relevance throughout a playthrough, since you're only considering a batch of abilities. Those have a more subjective value than the stats that are easily compared. And Kingdom Key is a decent generalist Keyblade, offering a defensive, magical, and physical ability at each level of the tree. With this setup, Kingdom Key feels much better than the starter Keyblades in other games. And since you have it from the start, you'll likely level it up by the time you get the next Keyblade. This adds another incentive to keep using it since you've already powered it up some. I personally think it's better to choose a specialist Keyblade that fits your playstyle, like Lady Luck for magic or Olympia for physical combos in the mid to late game. But if you prefer a jack-of-all-trades Keyblade, then Kingdom Key gives you a little bit of everything, and an argument could be made for using it through the entire story if you really want to. Much better than in the first games we talked about, but also a totally different system than what the series has seen before. Kingdom Hearts 3 would build off of that idea, while also taking what worked in the second numbered title. In KH2, Keyblades have static stats like in KH1, but an ability was added to give some of them a long-term niche. Kingdom Key has pretty low stats, with the ability to Defender in Original or Damage Control in Final Mix. It's one of the only defensive weapons if you find yourself dying a lot, but how valuable is that really? By the time you get your 4th Keyblade, Hero's Crest, you're making a huge damage trade-off by sticking with Kingdom Key. If you really want to be a cautious player, I could see the argument for it as a choice in the first half of the game, only because defensive options are so few. But once you start going through the second visits, where you have more armor and get higher stat Keyblades with better abilities, I don't think Kingdom Key is worth sticking with. And that loops us back to KH3, which combines features of KH2, Recoded, and even Union Cross. Kingdom Key starts the game with some stats and an ability like in KH2, but as you gather materials, you can power it up to boost its stats, and some of those power-up levels grant another ability to the weapon. It's worth noting though, that Keyblades are obtained at higher levels the further you are in the game. This is to even out their stat curves, while keeping them competitive with the options you might have powered up beforehand. As usual, you start with Kingdom Key at base level. It's got low stats and the ability Treasure Magnet, which can help if you're farming money or materials, but isn't really that great. Its form change is second form, changing Tora's outfit to his KH2 version, and adding some old moves to his kit. Kingdom Key stats aren't anything special when you get it, but similar to Recoded, getting it early lets you invest into it more by powering it up. If you don't choose to level it up though, it falls off pretty quick. In a playthrough, you won't have your Keyblade slots full until after visiting Twilight Town. From that point on, you'll be able to swap between 3 Keyblades, and the first setup is pretty balanced. You have Kingdom Key in second form for melee offense and magnet spiral, Hero's Origin and Counter Shield for defense and counterattacks, then Shooting Star and double arrow guns for magic and ranged attacks. A solid balance with comparable stats between them. After that, Kingdom Key first has to compete with Favorite Deputy, which is already leveled up once when you obtain it. Because of that, it has more base stats than Kingdom Key, but if you've leveled up Kingdom Key twice, it's still competitive and offers a more balanced choice. Next you'll get Ever After, which I would argue replaces Shooting Star more than Kingdom Key, since they serve as magic Keyblades with ranged attacks. The rest of the Keyblades you obtain from Disney Worlds, though, will compete with Kingdom Key's spot, but they all have the same argument for or against them. Either you invest in upgrading Kingdom Key and its stats stay competitive, or you don't and it falls off. Treasure Magnet is probably the worst ability on a Keyblade in this game, so its only perk is that you get it early to start powering it up sooner. Because of that, I think this goes on the list with Recoded, where Kingdom Key can be pretty good in the main story if you put the time and effort into it. Comparing all Keyblades at max level though, it's tied with Hero's Origin for the lowest stat total. Its form change and ability aren't uniquely powerful enough to make it worth using. Definitely not when you're taking to the data fights. Something funny I learned while making this is that all of the pre-order bonus Keyblades you could have gotten with the game are just better than Kingdom Key. The only difference in their stats is that the pre-order Keyblades have 1 extra magic point over it at all levels. They also have a similar version of Second Form, and much better abilities attached to them. So if you had gotten one of those with your copy of the game, Kingdom Key is basically immediately replaced. But there's our answer. Will Kingdom Key ever be good? Well, it was already usable and recoded in KH3 if you're dedicated, and really good in Days as a post-game Keyblade. We don't know what Keyblade system KH4 and beyond will use, but if it follows KH3's, then I'm hopeful that it will be, at minimum, usable again. I think a possible improvement on the Keyblade Forge system could be shifting away from leveling up the individual Keyblades to leveling up the entire Keyblade library at once. It's commonly said in the fandom that Sora has 1 Keyblade, and it changes form by swapping out the keychain at the end. So in KH3, you basically just level up those keychains. That would explain why they show up at the top of the screen in the Keyblade Forge. So what if instead, in KH4, we just level up the Keyblade itself? This would let you consider all of them as the game goes on. In current KH3, you're bound to have a few Keyblades that fall behind in level by the late game, and this would prevent that, so you might find a sleeper favorite once they're stronger and have more abilities. I also think stats like recoil and critical hits should come back to add more niches. Please just stop putting Treasure Magnet on Keyblades.